This is a video review for the Korg DS-10 Pocket Synthesizer. For those of you in the United States who've been trying to get your hands on one of these, save yourself some time and just go to Amazon.com to buy it. That's pretty much the most popular place that people are going to purchase this application. The prices range between $36 and $39, so it's pretty affordable. This application is damn near impossible to find in a gaming store because it's not really a game and it's not something that people typically go into a game store and ask for. So head on over to Amazon.com and pick yourself up one of these if you've been looking for it. What is the DS-10? Well, the DS-10 is simply a more modern virtual version of a synthesizer that Korg released in 1979 called the MS-10. But the DS-10 version of that is kind of like the original but tripped out on crack because it does quite a few things that the original synth could not do. And I think a very notable thing to mention is for those of us who are old enough to remember the original MS-10, if my memory serves me correctly, that original was a monophonic synthesizer. The DS-10, taking into consideration the different elements that they've added, the polyphony on this one is 6 voices. So that's a very notable difference. To address some of those questions out there that people have been asking about how does this game application, or not really game, how does this music application compare to other ones out there like Guitar Hero, Jam Session, or Electroplankton? Well, the answer to that is simply that it doesn't compare because those other music applications are pretty much turn it on and they're the instant gratification, you know, press one button and you're a star. This is nothing like that. This is a real music application. There are a lot of parameters and there's a lot of terminology in this that might be confusing to the novice and to somebody who's not familiar with synthesizers. So if you do buy this and you're not familiar with it, you might want to save yourself some time and go online and do a search for basic synthesizing techniques, and that way you can learn what these different parameters are and how adjusting those actually affect the sound. What you have here in front of you, this is the main screen. I believe the manual refers to this as the map screen, but this is the screen that you're going to go to get to the different parts of the synthesizer, such as your drum section, your synth parts, and your mixer and your effects. What you got here is you've got 2 analog synth emulators here. You also have a 4-part drum machine. You have a mixer. You have effects. You can go under a section and actually adjust individual parameters under the drums. You can adjust your swing. You can adjust your BPM. It's very easy to navigate. Simply just touching one of the icons takes you to that screen. This is the mixer. A very notable thing on this to mention is something that they absolutely could not do on the original MS-10 is it only makes sense, too, that Nintendo added this, and Korg added it as well, is the Chaos Pad. Seeing as that the DS uses the touch screen, it only made sense for them to add a Chaos Pad. So that's a very neat thing right there that you can use to manipulate your sound. Let's see. Right under here, under your synth parts, you have a couple different options of like inputting your note data. You can input it by using the synth sequencer part. And this is where you'll plug in your notes one note at a time, or you can use the virtual keyboard. That's pretty neat. I most of the time use the virtual keyboard, but you can do it either way. In the top of the screen, if you're noticing, I'm toggling back and forth between the different screens here. If you don't want to keep hitting that toggle button, you can go to the DS itself and press the L button, and that'll go back and forth between the different screens for you. If you want to start your sequencer without having to hit the play button all the time, you can simply press the X button and that'll also start and stop your sequences. So I'll go back to the other screen here. Other here is called the Synth Edit. This is where you're going to get to edit all your different parameters. And the obvious here is you've got a lot of parameters that you can adjust. You got your pitch section, your VCO, your VCF, your EG section. And different things you can adjust, such as under the VCF, you can adjust your filters. Under the EG, your envelope generator, you can adjust your standard ADSR, which is your attack, decay, sustain, and release. Under the pitch section, you can adjust your portamento. You got a drive knob down at the bottom. So there are a lot of parameters that you can adjust under the synth sections. And these parameters are available under both synth parts. And another notable thing to mention, too, is if I go into the drum section. The drum section also has individual synth parameters, just like under the synth sequencer parts. You have a VCO section, you have your VCF, and some basics under your EG. So that's a pretty cool thing too. Again, navigation of this is real simple. If you can use any Nintendo DS application that you have, you can navigate this. It's just simply touching the icon to access the parameters that you want. Recording on this is very simple. But again, I say very simple if you're familiar with these types of sequencers. If you've never used a step sequencer, it might be a little difficult for you at first, but the way that they laid this out is very simple. If you go under the drum sequencer, here's your drum sequencer. You've got your 4 parts. You can see to the far left of the screen, they're labeled 1 through 4. You got a play button at the top of the screen. You have a clear button, and you obviously have the toggle switch going back and forth. What you're going to do under this section is simply going to be plugging in your notes. Well, not your notes, but just plugging in your different parts simply by touching the blocks on the screen. Okay? And so what I'm doing here is I'm plugging in a real simple and real basic pattern. And I'll hit my play button. And what you're hearing there is you're hearing the drum parts on default. I haven't made any changes to those. And so what I'll do is I'll go under the drum section and show you some different things that you can do. I'm going to go under the snare. And if you notice the snare, it's got kind of an electronic sound to it. And I want to make that snare a little bit tighter. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to pull that to there. And I'm going to grab my filter section, play around with it a little bit. Okay, I'll go to my pitch. Okay, and I might, for example, want to make the snare have a little bit of a decay on it, so I'll pull that out a little bit. And then when I go back into my sequencer section, and I actually play this, you can hear the changes that I've made. So you see, it's very simple to do. If I want to go into the synth part, I'll go into the screen here where you can use the virtual keyboard. But what I'm also going to do here is go into the mixer section. I'm sorry, not mixer section. I'm going to go under the sequencer part here, and I'm going to take out this one note. And I'm going to use the keyboard. And I'll just do a simple live recording. Okay, very simple, very basic. And now I can go out of there and go into the synth edit part. Make some changes. So you see, it's pretty easy to do. And then I can go into our dedicated pattern sequencer like this right here. And as you see, I've got 16 different parts. I can access that pattern from there, or I can actually copy it, take it to another section, and I can make a completely different version of that pattern. And every time you copy this, it simply copies a pattern that you had prior to it, or the one that you selected. But when you copy these patterns, you can go under the copied version and you can make completely different settings that are not related to the first one, such as I can have a filter sweep happen on the bass line on pattern 2, and pattern 1 may not have a filter sweep. So you see, it's a real easy thing to navigate. Putting patterns together is a very simple thing to do. You can go under a dedicated song mode and you can chain your patterns together and create a song. A trick under that is a lot of people have mentioned that playing song mode, once you hit play, it loops back and repeats the song again. You can make that song actually stop by simply deactivating the first portion of that pattern after it starts playing, and once you do that and the loop repeats itself, you don't have to worry about the song repeating. So a very neat application, worth the money. If you got $30 to $40 and want to learn about synthesizers, this is a good approach. If you have any questions, just drop me a line and I'll do my best to answer them.